Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, literature, and popular culture. Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome to another show. My name is Bruce Markison, and once again, I'm joined by co-host and producer Tracy Asteria. Tracy, what's going on with you?
Oh my goodness, Bruce, not too much. Just busy with work, but definitely enjoying the fact that spring is here and we are just a touch away from summer. So that's super exciting. And I've been reading so many great reviews about the new Michael Jackson movie. So I'm really anxious to go see that. I know it's not horror related, but that's on my agenda for next weekend.
Tracy,
Yeah.
one of the weird things about spring, I mean, everybody loves spring. The days get longer, the weather's nicer, it's warmer.
hmm
But if you look at horror, like March, April, even into May, it's not traditionally a great time for horror movies to be released. They usually, released during the summer or maybe the fall leading up to Halloween. So it's kind of a lesser time of year for new horror movies. Not to say that there haven't been some good ones put out this year. I know Lee Cronin's The Mummy,
hmm
which we both would like to see, have not yet seen. That's gotten a lot of attention.
That's right.
But for the most part, you look at, like this date in horror for April, May, it's not really that strong a time. It's kind of interesting how it works that way.
No, exactly. I wanna say it was maybe this time last year, though, that, Sinners came out, so I think
Yes.
Sinners so I think we were spoiled last year, very spoiled, but, hopefully there's lots of good things to come. I've been reading that there's the potential for a Longlegs 2 movie with
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage, which I was really interested to see, so I think we got lots of neat stuff on the way too over the
You make a
next
great
year.
point, Tracy, about Sinners. It was about a year ago that
Mhm.
it debuted, and it would stay in theaters for months because it was such a hit at the box office. We've talked about how we felt it should have done even better at the Academy Awards, and maybe it deserved Best Picture. We're not going to go over that again, but yeah, that was a film that drew a lot of buzz in the spring of 2025, and then during the
Mhm.
summer, you sort of piggybacked on that with Weapons, another great movie. So
That's
we're
right.
still kind of waiting for that great movie of 2026. Hasn't happened yet. We'll have to wait and see if it happens in the coming months or maybe in the fall. So, given the fact that this is not the hottest time for new horror films, at least not right now, it's a great time to talk about classic horror. And joining us for a third turn on the program is friend of ours, author Christopher Locke. Christopher has written nearly 30 books, including several volumes on classic horror history. In the past, we've talked to Christopher about his books on The Invisible Man and The Bride of Frankenstein. He has a brand new book out on the Wolfman that we're going to be talking about a little bit later this year. But tonight on this episode of the Ghostly Gallery, we'll have a chance to talk to him about one of his earliest books. I think it was his earliest, came out in 2022, a biography of Jack Pierce, Hollywood's makeup master. And it is really one of the first full-length treatments on Jack Pierce, who did appear in some films early in his career, but best known as a groundbreaking makeup man for Universal Pictures. We're going to get into his career and his life. Joining us for a third time on the Ghostly Gallery airwaves is Christopher Locke. Chris, how have you been?
Fantastic. Bruce, Tracy, always a pleasure to connect with you guys. Thank you again so much for having me back and for your continued interest. I've been looking forward to this podcast all week. Looking forward to dispelling some of the myths that
Mhm.
surround Jack Pierce and his life, personal and professional. Really to discuss and emphasize his great accomplishments in Hollywood and to sharing new information that's never been available, never been discussed on any podcast, anyone's podcast for that matter, publication or any website. So really looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
I have to say, it concerns me a little bit that you've been looking forward to this all week. We need to put more things on your calendar. I mean,
Maybe
it's
so. Well, I've been watching baseball. I've been watching my Tigers,
yeah,
from the Detroit area, and going back and forth. But besides that, the games, I have been looking forward to it. So.
yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit of baseball because Jack Pierce did play some baseball after emigrating from Greece, coming to the United States.
No.
So, Chris, right off the bat, most horror authors, historians, focus on actors, directors, the films themselves as subject matter. You instead, with this book in 2022, you chose the famed makeup man, Jack Pierce.
Yeah.
Why?
Great question. This is again. This came out in July of 2022. My first. I've written. Hate to correct you there, Bruce, but more than 40 books.
40.
Let's get that straight.
All right, 40.
But this was my first one on the Universal. Had any connection with the Universal horror? Of course, I grew up as a baby boomer in the 60s. I bought the Aurora Monster Kits. I watched the films. I did my own makeup and stuff for Halloween. I bought Famous Monsters of Filmland, and always had that interest in the Universal monsters, and not just as performers in front of the camera, but those behind. I knew about James Whale. I knew about Jack Pierce and others. The first books I wrote, though, was mostly about Michigan history. I'm from Dearborn originally, so a lot of Ford Motor history as well, history of Kmart and Kresge's and Kellogg's, which is all in Michigan. But then I realized that I tried to find a book on Jack Pierce. There was a kind of a magazine. It's about 20 pages, maybe something like that, is all I could find. And as I've stated in prior podcasts, my incentive to write is I like to write and research the books that I and others would like to read, but they don't yet exist. So I couldn't find anything on Jack Pierce. I said, well, here's an opportunity. And the more I dug into his background, I have connections to old periodicals, old newspapers, of course, Ancestry.com. Com helps a lot, did a lot of reading and in the library and other research periodicals. But the more I just became such a fan of the guy. I mean, most of us, we know about Jack. He did the makeup. He had a big ego and couldn't get along with some of the performers. But I always felt sorry for Jack. And this doing the research really brought out a lot of the personal and professional things that no one really knew about. And I found it very interesting. He was talented. He was brilliant. He was determined. He was relentlessly self-trained, as was Lon Chaney Sr. And he utilized a lot of networking opportunities to get, even once after he immigrated to the U.S., when he came out to California, he started, and we'll talk about it, but he started working in movie theaters when they had the one reel movies at the time. And he would be the one in the projection room changing it. And he made a lot of connections, got into the industry, tried out for baseball out there. It didn't work out. So I figured, well, I'm out here, might as well stay. And really built a unique personal brand and produced, high results. Jack was a perfectionist. There's another thing that pulled me into this. If you look at the photos of Pierce when you have Karloff in the makeup chair, you have Chaney Jr., look around the room and look how organized he is. The brushes, the bottles, the containers of cake makeup. He was such a perfectionist with everything he did. I would have loved to have seen what his house looked like, right? And how organized it was. But I found as I dove into it, I found that there's so much more about Jack Pierce than just being a makeup artist. He was an actor, assistant director, 40 years of Hollywood makeup. But there's so many personal things that we can talk about, including his time in the baseball and his connection to the 1936 Olympics, which is also in the book. That really said, I've got to do a thorough uh, 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 biography on this man because he deserves so much more recognition than what he's got in the past.
Yeah. Chris, given that he's not as famous as a Karloff, a Lugosi, either of the Cheneys, senior or junior, was it difficult to find worthwhile information on him? Tell us about that process.
It it was and it wasn't. Um, when you do some initial investigations, you find a little hint here, a little hint there. And then you focus on more in-depth research. I didn't find it really in the libraries and other websites, uh, and sites like Wikipedia, IMDb, um, have a lot of things wrong about him that needed to be dispelled. You can't believe everything you read. You got to take everything with a grain of salt. You know what that's like, Bruce, when you're doing a book. You got to do your own research.
Sure.
So I have access to, again, old periodicals, old city directories, old newspapers. Newspapers.com is a great site. You can type in a person's name or a couple of words of a sentence, put in a date, a location, and it'll pull up information from, again, directories, newspapers, periodicals that had not been in any other prior book or publication. So it was, I've had a background of engineering, of research that I've had to put in together for projects. So that background kind of helped. But really, once I got going with it, the information just poured out of the out of the internet. So one of the things that I also found that he kind of stumbled upon the movie industry. He was a Greek immigrant, and just out of the blue during its infancy, think about he ends up in Hollywood at the end of 1909, early 1910. And the time frame you're going from Nickelodeons to one reel movies at the time. So he lived through 60 years of that industry advancements that have been made since then. And you know, he's been labeled as being stubborn, as being egotistical, hard to work with, a perfectionist. But we are talking Hollywood.
Yeah.
I think for all practical purposes, most people in Hollywood are like that, whether you're in front of the camera or behind. So I thought he was got kind of a bum rap about that. But the more I dug and more information I found, uh, he was those things, but he was also a great artist, and he had the results that he produced really kind of made up for the little uh, personality flaws that he may have had.
Hmm.
I'm kind of curious. What was he like as a person with all the research that you've done?
He was I went by what people said about him,
Hmm.
and that's included in the book. Uh, Boris Karloff said he was a lovely man, a very talented man, a very lovely man. Karloff, more than any other performer, got along with him so well.
Hmm.
Even Cheney Jr., some of the legends about Cheney Jr. And Pierce, butting heads in the makeup room, they're both perfectionists of what they did, both very professional, both very talented. And
Mhm.
of course, Cheney's own father was the creme de la creme of makeup artists back then,
Right.
and he said that Pierce was a great talent, a great makeup artist, second only to his father. So
Wow.
yeah, they did butt heads sometimes, and even they asked Pierce, "What did you how was your relationship with Cheney Jr.? Reflecting back, was it bad? And he said yes and no, and that's all I'm going to say. So
Yeah.
I think they were both respectful to each other.
Oh, wow. Did you did you find anything in your research that, fans might not expect? Like, anything, like, really quirky or intriguing that normal fans just wouldn't know about him?
Uh, a lot of it, a lot about not just his humble beginnings, how he got to the
Mm.
U.S., um, his time in baseball, as again Bruce mentioned, his connection with the Olympics. He won what it wasn't the Academy Award, an Oscar, but at the time it was the equivalent of that, and he was the first one to win that award. So there's a lot of things in his personal and professional life that people didn't know, and we can really start out, if you don't mind, uh, coming to Greece. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and one of the things I found out in my research, that if you look up Wikipedia, IMDb, and other websites that they get wrong, is that they have his birthday down as May 5th, 1889, which is coming up. He was actually born in 1885. And some people say, well, so what? It's another 4 years off. Or for those who are really researching and getting biographies right, it's a big deal. There's a 4 year difference there, and that changes things. Um, his gravestone says, 1889 when he was born. But, my father-in-law's gravestone not only has the wrong year he was born on, it's the wrong date of the month. So it happens. And you think to yourself, who perpetrated that 1889? Well, he probably did. And you think, Tracy, Bruce, why would someone lie about their age? Why would someone want to appear younger than they are? Because I can think of a lot of reasons, employment being one of them. But he was born Johannes Picolius in Greece in May 5th of 1885 in a town called Portokali, Greece. It's about 55 miles southwest of Athens, and it's right now it's like a great resort town on the water. But there's a mass immigration that came out of Greece in within a couple of decades around that time frame. 420,000 people immigrated from Greece at that time, and there was a big economic crisis, which is one of the reasons of coming over. He was about 23 years old when he came over, and he came over in September 1908 on the SS Oceana, and he arrives in Ellis Island again on October 16th of 1908. Now, again, how do we know he was for sure he's born in 1885? Well, the immigration records, census records going up to 1940, his marriage license. He marries Blanche Craven in 1925 in October, and he puts down his age as 40. 1925 minus 40 is 1885. But all of these census going up, he had indicated he was born in 1885. He shows up in Ellis Island. He travels to Chicago and lands in what's called the Greek Delta District, which is kind of northwest area of Chicago, with family members. I couldn't figure out if he came over with family or not, if it was just him. But he was a short guy. He's only 5'5.5", pretty slim, but he was a good athlete.
Hmm.
And he, at the time in Chicago, there were several semi-pro baseball teams. There's 6 of them, major ones in Chicago. One of them was the Logan Squares, and there were ball fields all on the other side of the Greek Delta District. So it's probably where he got his introduction to it. So he signs up for the team for the 1909 season, and he makes it. James Nixie Callahan was the manager of the time. And Callahan, as Bruce, you may be aware, also was a player for the White Sox, and eventually I think he was the president of that organization at some point. He was a great manager. Saw some talent in Pierce. So Pierce's first exhibition was on April 4th. He played left field. He got a hit. And his first real game was occurred on May 16th of 1909. He played left field. He was also designated hitter. Now, if you asked Pierce back then, he would have said he was a fantastic baseball player. but not really. You look at the newspapers.com, you look at Logan Squares, and you look at that time frame in Chicago, and I actually included it in the book. It shows the scores of the games and who played and what hits they had. Now, there's Pierce's name right on the roster, which shows us that Pierce didn't wait to change his name when he went to Hollywood. He changed it when he came to Chicago, probably just prior to joining the Logan Squares. Everyone's got an Americanized name, so that's the time he changed it, and his family did not care for that. But his original name was John Pierce, John being a variation of Johannes, which was his real name. So he plays ball up to the end of the season, not quite, end of August, early September, and could not find out if he got let go or just left on his own. But he didn't play any more ball in Chicago. He decides, I'm going to go to California. Got a lot more. They got 20 teams out there. I have a better chance, and it's a lot warmer than Chicago.
Yeah.
And you hit Greece. So he heads out there. He ends up at what's called the Waldo Complex, which is kind of the Skid Row area of LA where the theater district is. He tries out for some teams, doesn't make it because they said you're too short, basically.
Yeah.
He gets hurt, but he decides, hey, I'm just going to stay. Didn't make it in baseball, but let's see what else I can pick up. So he gets a job around the corner of his apartment at a movie theater called Herman's Moving Picture Show. And he's the picture operator. He's the one that changes the reels. He is there by December of 1909. So he left Chicago pretty quick. How do we know this? There's an article about him in the newspaper. On December 6, 1909, LA Evening Post Record, there was an overblown fuse at the theater. It created a fire, didn't burn the place down, but Pierce's hands were burned in the process. And it's got his name right in the article about that. So we know he was there at that time. He later changes his name. And again, this is Tracy, per your question. There's a lot of interesting things about him that we didn't know that would I think shock people. But he changes his name to Jack only because there is already a John P. Pierce living in L.A. who's a musician.
Hmm.
He didn't want to get confused, so he changed his name to Jack P. Pierce, and the P was based on his last name. A variation of his last name. So again, he stays in California, and this is 2 years before Universal Pictures was even formed. And he makes connections in the theaters and movie industries, the people dropping off the reels. He was very good at networking to get around. In 1912, he ends up working at the Art Theater in Redondo Beach, California. And this is an important time in Hollywood, a transition time. They're going from one reels to multi-reels. The studios are now becoming a little bit stronger. They're starting to not just do the films, but to advertise, to buy in the theaters that they're going to be shown in. So it's an interesting time in Hollywood to be there. And he ends up getting his first acting role in 1915. And it is with Universal Pictures. And it's a movie called Misjudged. It no longer exists. It's one of these lost sound films. But he plays a bad guy named Baldy Joe. And, obviously based on his looks, with all due respect to Jack, he's not going to be a leading man. He's not going to be a Clark Gable or even a Lon Chaney. So He usually plays villains, bad guys, outcasts in these movies, and he learns to do makeup like Lon Chaney did. Lon Chaney and Jack Pierce had a lot in common. If you look at the biography of Man of a Thousand Faces, James Cagney, 1957, there's a scene in there where Chaney goes up, sees the list of characters this movie studio is looking for the next film. He sees, oh, here's a guy, they need a long scar on his face. So he went, got his makeup box, makes up his scar, and then stands in front of the director. Yeah, I want that scar. That's pretty much what Pierce did.
Hmm.
That's how he learned his trade of makeup. And he ends up in a film in December of 1917 called The Enchanted Kiss, and he played a dwarf. This is sort of a horror, his first connection with horror genre. And it's produced by Vitagraph Studios, which within a couple of years, he would be an assistant director with that studio. So he kept progressing and moving on from one role, one job, one area behind, in front of him, behind the camera, to the next. And that really interested me, and I think people will be interested to find that out as well.
So based on what you're saying, Chris, it sounds to me like he basically taught himself, and he eventually taught himself to become masterful at makeup.
Yeah, he was, and again, a lot like Chaney, and again, we'll get into a little bit more. Back in those days, silent films, the makeup came from stage, the theatrical makeup. You know, the overdone eyes, the black lips. This was all to reflect when you're on stage to the people in the audience, to the back row. And they kind of, the performers carried that over from the stage. It wasn't any major makeup organization at the time. So, and he always thought, that's overboard. That looks ridiculous, actually, on film. This isn't a stage play. He had never been in theater. So he started to get a little bit more realistic with his looks and with his makeup, which is something that Chaney did as well. Chaney did not. There are some films he was a little overboard, the early silent films, but you know, The Phantom, The Hunchback, it's all very realistic. It's not makeup-y, I would say, at all.
Oh, wow. When you think about his work, what is it that stands out the most to you, the most unique?
Um, I think that, and we can start with again his realism, his desire for realism. He would go to the library, just as Chaney did, and research the characters, whether it was the Frankenstein monster, the Bride of Frankenstein, the Wolfman, whatever the character was that he was going to do, and the Mummy as well. Chaney did the same thing with the Phantom and the Hunchback. He went back to the Gothic novels and the descriptions that they wrote about. And if you read the description in the actual novels and look at him on screen, it's very, very similar. Now, fortunately, Frankenstein, the description, Mary Shelley's novel, was very limited. So he had to go to the library. He had to look up what would happen to bodies, a dead carcass. If you look at the hands of Karloff, the ends of the fingers are blackened because when the body dies, blood coagulates in the end of the fingers. He did that research. He knew that Frankenstein was not a doctor. He was a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
So his ability to stitch bodies together was not as done as properly as a doctor would have done. That's why you had the flat head. He figured, Pierce figures, well, what's the easiest way to get into the skull? Let's just go and lift it like a lid and put the brain in. Because he assumed that's what a scientist would do and not a true doctor. That's
Mhm.
why you see the scar in his forehead, because he's a sloppy surgeon. Let's face it, Frankenstein. Um, so he did a lot of research that way.
Mhm.
Um, and if you look at the first film in which he really had to um, use a realistic type of makeup, it was for a film called The Monkey Talks. Now, if you take one, let me do 1 second. I need to turn the light on because I can't see. There it is. Monkey Talks. This is February 1926, and director Raoul Walsh was producing this film, directing this film. It's about a circus act who's under bad financial times. They need to create some sort of an act that people will come see. So they're going to make up this little guy, acrobat, make him look like a chimpanzee, and have him talk, and that will bring money and people into that. Now, back in 1925, Pierce had worked with Raoul Walsh in a movie called The Wanderer, and this is Pierce's first makeup assignment. It was a very exotic, Middle Eastern type film. That's where he met his wife, Blanche Craven, on the set of the Wanderer, and he liked what he did. So they tried using masks, rubber masks, these dumb gorilla suits that look phony. So he asked Jack for help, and Jack knew that, well, I have to be able to convince on film that the film audience believes it's a talking chimpanzee, but that's not going to happen if the real audience doesn't believe it. So he went to the library and looked up pictures of chimpanzees, compared it to the actor's face, and in the book, as I show, there's the makeup for The Monkey Talks, and it's
Amazing.
phenomenal. It's realistic.
Yeah.
This is 40 some years before Planet of the Apes.
That's
Right.
phenomenal.
Pierce was way ahead of his time. So, um,
Hmm.
so he studied again, the features of chimps, and he made his makeup out of yak hair, which is actually made from yaks. He used it in the Wolfman. They still use it today because it's a great material to use. And he also used, spirit gum adhesive, which is still around. And he used, you'll often see in his description of his makeup a product called collodion, which is a thick syrup that you apply to cotton to help build up. The Frankenstein forehead is of that mixture, collodion and cotton. The issue with collodion is it's highly flammable. And it always freaks me out to see
Mm.
Carl sitting there in the makeup chair with Jack putting the makeup on, and Karloff's sitting there with a cigarette. I'm thinking, oh my God, that room's going to blow up.
Yeah.
But so again, this is 40 years before the Planet of the Apes. That monkey makeup, caught the attention of Carl Lumley of Universal, who decides, I got to hire this guy. I got to bring him on board, which he did in 1928. And he had a film called The Man Who Laughs, which is a silent film. It came out in 28. The plot involves a man who's, again, part of a circus. When he was a child, a cruel surgeon performed surgery on him to make him look like he's always laughing and grinning. And here's that picture. That looks familiar
Yeah.
to people, I'm certain. So the makeup, the teeth, and the hair, all of that was the inspiration for Batman's The Joker.
Wow.
Well, once again, Pierce is doing these things decades ago that decades later would influence other entities that we're aware of. So that's always fascinating about Pierce as well.
Do you have a favorite design that he created? Your all-time favorite?
Yeah, Frankenstein monster.
Oh, nice.
The Frankenstein monster. And it's my favorite for a number of reasons. That's a great question, Tracy. Number one, it was pure ingenuity. and creativity came out of it. He didn't have any description. Again, if you read the description of the monster, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is very limited. So he had to come up with his own design.
Mhm.
Uh, and, the neck bolts, again, the laceration, we went into some of the things that he studied on. And of course, Karloff worked on that with him. Karloff is the one who suggested I have this plate in the right side of my mouth. If I
Mhm.
take it out, it's going to make it look more sunken. And Karloff and Pierce worked together for 2 weeks at the studio, at Pierce's house, at testing the makeup and going back and forth. And that's really where they developed a great friendship. And in
Mhm.
fact, in the book, I have the address of where Pierce was living at the time.
Hmm.
And I don't know if those who are living there now even realize the history behind what went on in that place. So I always put in the addresses where Pierce lived in case someone wants to take a city tour of LA, because a lot of those residences are still standing.
Mhm.
And it's also just the impact of the monster when he turns the first time in the laboratory and Whale just zooms in on that face. I had that lasting impression as a kid. And
Hmm.
let's face it, the forehead laceration, the bolts, the green skin, the flat head uh, was so popular, Universal had to copyright it. And we still talk about it today. You show that to any kid today who may not have heard of any of these prior horror films. Well, that's
Mhm.
Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster. So he's had a lasting impression all these decades. And that, to me, is one of the most um, memorable. Bride of Frankenstein comes second, though.
Hmm.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's in her Bride of Frankenstein book. Uh, he makes up Elsa Lanchester with the hairdo and the Nefertiti hairdo and everything. But she's only on film for 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes. It made such an impact that there's still, you go to any costume store during
Yeah.
Halloween, they Bride of Frankenstein outfit.
That's
And
right.
talk or anything, but it was her performance, it was Whale's direction and Pierce's makeup that made that iconic figure who was on film for less than 3 minutes, something we still talk about today.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
great characters, great choices.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think you mentioned in the book, I was just reading it earlier today, that the gray streaks that Pierce put in Elsa Lanchester's hairdo basically were to reflect the electricity, the process of electricity that brought her to
yeah,
life. That's what Pierce was thinking. He was
yeah,
always thinking. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He put a lot of thought. That's a great point, Bruce. He put a lot of thought, and he was a good artist too. There are some pictures of him in the book of sketches he's done. He was a very talented guy,
Yeah.
uh, and he put a lot of thought into everything he did. Karloff's coat. Now Karloff was not quite 6 foot, but the sport coat he's got on, the sleeve only goes up to here to
Yep.
make it look like he's taller and bigger than he is. Of course, the platform shoes as well. So he put thought into
Sure.
everything he did. Now, Elsa Lanchester will tell you she didn't care for Pierce. Um, and again, because of his personality,
Mm.
which I understand completely, the way that his personality was. He wanted to be recognized. He wanted to
Yeah.
people say, "Hey, great job." But again, that's 90% of Hollywood is like that, right?
Yeah.
But she would go on to say uh, here I have it here. Pierce took ages to create a scar. And you look at the scar that's on her neck, the 2 scars that go around where the head was attached. That hardly shows up underneath my chin. For an entire hour, he would draw 2 lines of makeup, put a red line down the middle, and then start blending the white edges of the scar, done meticulously. Then she says, "Well, quite frankly, I'm sure you could have just bought the scar for 10 cents at some joke shop." But it wasn't Pierce's style. He was a perfectionist.
Yeah. You talk about him and Karloff getting along so well.
Yeah.
Why was that? Was it because Karloff was just patient in that chair? And, I'm sure it took a toll on him, hours and hours, both putting on the makeup and then a couple of hours after a long day of shooting to remove the makeup.
Yeah.
Was it because Karloff was patient, or was there something else about their personalities that meshed?
I uh, I think Pierce was used to people um, being upset with him and not as patient as they should be. Uh, Lugosi applied his own makeup for Dracula. Pierce mixed it, the grease paint, the
Yeah.
green gray based on the lighting, which is another thing. He did a lot of testing of makeup and was a little ticked because Lugosi, who was a talented makeup artist himself, insisted on applying him. So Karloff had been in 80 some movies. He was 41, 42 years old. He was looking for a break. And when Whale saw him in the cafeteria when he was filming the film Graft in August of 31, and he said, "You have a very interesting face. Would you be interested in the monster? I'm going to hook you up with Jack Pierce." So Pierce was looking for a defining moment. Karloff's looking for a defining moment, and the two worked together. Yes, absolutely, Bruce. Karloff was a very patient man. He was an English gentleman. There were times that he said he came this close, especially during the mummy makeup, which was only applied once, by the way, for the beginning of the film, that main makeup. But he said he came so close to saying, "Jack, I can't take it anymore."
Hmm.
4 hours though in the makeup chair for Frankenstein, the makeup on every day. There was a couple of times Karloff went home, said, "I'm just going to sleep like this," but it was very difficult to do. But on and off, 4 hours on, couple off. Uh, Karloff was a very patient person, but I think Pierce appreciated that.
Yeah.
And again, being the English gentleman and working with them, suggesting things to him is why they got so along together. And Pierce would later say to the world, "Best makeup man in the world. I owe him a lot."
Yeah. You mentioned Lugosi and Pierce conflict there because Lugosi wanted to apply his own makeup.
Yeah,
The makeup there is a little more subtle than what we have with Frankenstein, but there's
yeah,
the widow's peak, there's the pallid look to the skin,
yeah.
some other things that are a little more subtle. I'm curious, was Lugosi applying what Pierce told him to apply, or was Lugosi kind of freelancing?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have the answer to that. It was probably a little bit of both. They had a design of what they wanted to do with the widow's peak. I'm sure that Pierce made that up. He was very much into the hair as well.
Yeah.
Of course, uh, and I have her in the book. Her name uh, escapes me right now. My short term memory shot, but um, he was very involved as he was with Elsa Lanchester's hair in the hair design as well, and was a man who laughs and suggested the widow peak and everything. But it was Pierce who gave it to him, applied it, and he just applied it himself. So like you said, it wasn't a lot of makeup. There's no blood. There's no fangs. There was nothing like that
Right.
we have today. But it was probably a combination of both. But yeah, Pierce did not. It wasn't long after Lugosi too applied his own makeup that the makeup union became much stronger. In fact, in 1928, there was the Makeup Artists Association formed in Hollywood by the end of 37, and in 27 and 1928, Pierce was the vice president of that organization. Something else that I found out as well. Um, that kind of carries us to 1935, the time of The Bride of Frankenstein, at the same time they're filming Werewolf of London. Now, Pierce did not get along with Henry Hull, who was the actor. And Pierce is running back and forth from one set to the other. Of course, Valerie Hobson was in both films.
Hmm.
And Hull insisted that he didn't want the full makeup design. And I have a picture of Henry Hull in the full werewolf. He almost looks like Lon Chaney in The Wolfman. And that picture is in the book. Hulls insisted, no, people have to be able to recognize my character, a human. So we need less of the makeup. And the director, Stuart Walker, agreed with that. So Pierce had to scale back a lot of that. And he shelved it and used it later on Cheney Jr. But after the film was released, Henry Hall, who had a huge ego as well, told a reporter that he said, he told Pierce, here's the way I want to look. Now fix me up to look like this on screen. Like he's taking full credit for it. And that just infuriated Pierce to no end as well. But then, of course, Werewolf in London did not do well at the box office. I like the film. I think it's a great film. But Pierce finally had the ability to do his full official werewolf makeup with Lon Chaney Jr.
Right.
6 years later.
I want to talk about the Wolfman in a moment, but some other major classics from Universal, and Pierce had seen worked on all of them.
Yeah.
You talk about The Mummy, and that was very complicated, even though Karloff appears as the full-fledged mummy only briefly at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
But throughout the film, as the character, the Art F. Bay, his physical deterioration occurs, and gradually he becomes more wrinkled, and he becomes more monstrous, even though he doesn't have the full wrappings of the mummy as we would think. That had to involve an incredible amount of makeup time, application, Pierce working with Karloff there.
It did. Obviously, it was not as drastic as the initial. When you look at the initial opening, of which Karloff appears only for a few seconds in full makeup.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, Bruce and Tracy, I know Pierce wasn't a perfectionist, but I went to the extreme of doing everything from head to toe when they only showed him from, basically here up. He could have been wearing, a Bermuda shorts. No one would have known. But again, that wasn't Pierce's style. But again, he goes back to the LA library. He researches ancient Egyptian mummies that were, reasonably preserved. He thought Karloff resembled Ramesses II more, so based the character on that. He experimented with various papers, linens, grease paints, burning in the wrappings and ovens to get various effects. And what that resulted was in 1932 receiving the Hollywood Filmograph Award, and this is the pre-Oscar award for makeup. And he received that on January 14th of 1933. He beat Wally Westmore. Wally Westmore's makeup on Frederick March for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is an incredible film and makeup application in itself. And he beat him for that. And he was awarded the trophy by Karloff. And Karloff said, I want to publicly acknowledge to you, Jack Pierce, the deep debt of gratitude I owe. For were it not for your wonderful makeups, the success I had in The Dark House, Frankenstein, and The Mummy would have been impossible. So here we are again with all of that intense makeup. And here's humble Karloff, the English gentleman, thanking him for helping establish his career as well.
Then we have The Invisible Man, and the special effects there were done by a different guy, John Fulton. But that makeup where the face of the Invisible Man is essentially covered with cloth, and then there's the glasses or the goggles, and then there's something over the head. All of that was devised by Pierce, and it kind of gets overlooked, but it's perfectly done. It just fits. It fits the job it's supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. There's no makeup. It's just bandages, weird goggles, a hat, sometimes little puffs of hair coming out. And he did kind of follow the description that H.G. Wells had in the novel. So again, still made it look more realistic. The shiny fake nose that he used, the goggles again are certainly weird. And in the book, Invisible Man, we discussed it back in October, where the goggles came from, and they looked at several of them before deciding these are the weirdest ones we can use. But this really revealed the true creative genius of Pierce and this nightmarish character he created. And Whale and Pierce knew how to play on the human psyche of the audiences, just like Hitchcock was famous for.
What about the relationship between Pierce and Claude Rains, who played the Invisible Man? Haven't heard much about that. Do you know much about it?
They got along. This was Claude Rains' first movie. He had been a stage actor and he had been in one silent film, but he had never been in a movie before. And you think about it, the opening credits doesn't even say the Invisible Man, it says Claude Rains in. And we had this discussion, or the October podcast as well. But they got along. Rains was pretty much reserved man, kept to himself. And again, he did go through a lot with the makeup. He's dressed, the bandages. They had to put oxygen through his suit to feed him. Sometimes he couldn't breathe. He did pass out at least once during the time. So I'm sure he didn't appreciate it and wasn't aware of what he was going to go through for the film. But I have not heard any negativity from either gentleman on the other. I think they got along all right.
Yeah. And then we have another one of his masterpieces, just in terms of the makeup. It's also a great movie, and that's The Wolfman. And if only we had recordings of those lengthy sessions with Chaney and Pierce.
Yeah,
those must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and again, we can discuss the book for Wolfman, which has all of this information in it, as well as the Jack Pierce book.
Yeah.
But given the failure of Werewolf of London, this is kind of Pierce's chance to kind of redeem himself. Now you got Karloff, who's aging, Lugosi, who's aging. Neither one of them could have done a good job given their age for the Wolfman. So Universal needed a new character, a young, fresh name, but someone with a name that's recognizable. And they brought on Lon Chaney Jr., who did a brilliant job in that film. Chaney Jr. was really a great actor. And they producer director George Wagner contacted Kurt Siodmak to write a screenplay, which was actually dramatically changed. The screenplay he came up with has changed so much, and I've got that in the book as well, where all the differences were. And the professional, again, relation between Pierce and Chaney Jr. is legendary, but I think it's a little blown out of proportion more than it should be. Again, he considered Pierce to be the most gifted makeup artist, second only to his father. When asked again about was it difficult to work with Chaney, Pierce just said yes and no. I'll leave it at that. But we have to recall too is that this is different for Chaney Jr. than it was for Karloff. Karloff was in a makeup seat every day for Frankenstein, 4 hours a day. The Wolfman only appears on screen for 5 to 7 minutes of the whole film, and they didn't film that part until into November. So Chaney was only made up as the Wolfman for the 41 film maybe 3 times, and that was it. To get all the filming in, the publicity shots and all that. There is no on-screen transformation facial in the Wolfman. 1941, we see his feet change, and we see him when he's passed out as a Wolfman going back to human, which was only a few clips, but there was no on-screen face man to wolf transformation scene. That wasn't until the sequels, the Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, did he undergo that, which was a lot more, difficult. So Chaney Jr. didn't suffer as much as Karloff did. I think that probably helped, but it wasn't fun to have all that. If you ever, I've done makeup. In fact, in my Wolfman book, I've got pictures of me as a teen, as a kid, with this Wolfman. I used spirit gum, not knowing what the heck I was doing, and the fake hair. Then you try to pull it off. Good luck with that. It's rubbing alcohol, and it's not fun. So, Chaney didn't appreciate that, but again, it was only about 3 times he had to undergo that for the 41 film.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's kind of interesting. I'm actually curious if you could like sit in Jack Pierce's makeup chair, would you do it? And who would you choose to become?
I'd like to be Bruce. With the glasses, no makeup needed. Yeah, I don't know. Boy, that'd be tough. No understanding it now. We're assuming Jack is going to use his same applications and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know that I would do that. I don't know that Karloff knew what he's going up for, either for the mummy or the Frankenstein monster.
Mhm.
Chaney had to have some idea. I've always loved the Wolfman. I always wanted to be the Wolfman. So maybe that just once, but put it on and then I'll take it off myself.
Very good answer. Very good answer.
Yeah.
I'd love to sit in his chair and do the Bride of Frankenstein. I think that would be super cool myself.
Yeah, that would. Hey, next podcast, have the hair on. Let's see how it looks.
I will aim for that.
Did you have another question, Tracy?
No, I think I'm okay right now for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Chris, about Pierce's departure from Universal.
Yeah.
And I've always read that it was in large part because of his abrasiveness, not getting along with some of the actors. Was it that, or was there anything else?
It was really a number of things. Yes, he was could be somewhat abrasive, but again, so were some of the producers and directors that some of these performers dealt with. So the last film he does for Universal, which was Universal International by that time, was actually called Slave Girls, a Technicolor film that starred Yvonne DiCarlo, who played Lily in The Munsters. And other people like Robert Crawford, Andy Devine, Arthur Treacher were in the film as well. That was his last film after nearly 20 years with the studio. And he was brought in on Friday, February 28th, 1947. He was summoned to the executive offices, and they informed him that makeup artist Bud Westmore was one of 6 Westmore brothers who were makeup artists. That Bud was going to be the new head of makeup, and therefore his services are no longer needed. And of course, Pierce got angry, and he said, "The quality of your makeup then is going to suffer." And the executive pretty much told him, "Well, the makeup won't be perfect. We'll still sell tickets. That's what it's all about. We don't care."
Yeah.
So the LA Valley Times on March 4th came out with an article about, they made it sound like Pierce just, was taking they talked about Westmore's promotion, and they talked about Pierce taking an extended vacation in Palm Springs. I don't know if he ever went or not, but there are a number of reasons. One, they thought he was 57. He was actually 61 years old at the time. So he's aging. He's always resisted new techniques. He still wanted to do the layer by layer. He wasn't into the rubber applications of foreheads or ears or noses or anything. And then you've got the merger, Universal International, didn't go all that well. So they're having financial problems. They're trying to cut down on costs and time. So when you're paying an actor to be in a makeup chair for 6 hours versus maybe an hour, you're going to consider that. So Bud Westmore was a new kid. He was energetic. He had a lot of cost and time savings ideas. He was very talented as well. So they let Pierce go and brought Bud on. But there were a number of reasons. It wasn't just because it was difficult. If you're a difficult employee, you don't keep you around for 20 years.
Right.
Especially if with the talent he has. So so now he's a freelance makeup artist, and the first thing he does is he goes into television. He goes into other substandard movies. The first thing he did was there was a drama called Dr. Jim that he did the makeup on summer of '47. Then he went to RKO. They filmed the Joan of Arc, directed by Victor Fleming. It starred Ingrid Bergman as Joan of Arc, and he did the makeup on that as well. That was the start of his freelance time. But he was never hired by another studio until television. The old Mr. Ed's series that started in 1961. Some of you don't have any idea what we're talking about here. Mr. Ed was an old TV show in the early 60s, ran from 61 to 66, I think. It was about a talking horse.
Oh, yeah.
And Ellen Young was the owner. It was a comedy, obviously. And he had a talking horse named Ed. And, of course, Ed would get into all sorts of predicaments. And he was the owner, Wilbur was his name. The only one that knew Ed talked. So, of course, even his wife thought he was strange for the stuff he did.
I think Ed was a lot more intelligent than Wilbur.
He was very intelligent.
Yeah.
And he worked on that show from January '61. He did 104 episodes. His last episode was aired on May 17th of 1964, just a few days after Pierce turned 70. And Alan Young did not know who Pierce was. He was not aware of his background, but he would have long discussions about old Hollywood with Pierce. He really liked Jack Pierce. He said he was very conscientious, even then, of the smallest of details. But he went to Pierce's house. Pierce showed him things in his garage that he had used during the old movies. And he just really thought the world of him at that time.
So with his departure from Universal, we kind of see the peak has come and gone, even though he still had skills and still had the talent to do this. You mentioned Bud Westmore, who was good, but I think it's safe to say that Pierce was better, right?
I would say only because as an artist and as a sculptor, he was better. It's one thing to be able to build up a person's face using the materials around you, the crude materials around you, versus putting a mask on, basically, or rubber application of a latex application of some kind. It's a lot easier. Now, there's skill in developing that application and applying it, making it look realistic. But it certainly cut out the time to do it. And again, I think you're right. I think Pierce was definitely more of a gifted artist in that aspect.
And I guess that brings us to the really tough question, and maybe a question that you can't answer. I'll throw it at you anyway. Who was the best? Was it Pierce or Chaney Sr.?
It's hard to say. I wouldn't even want to say who was best. Obviously, Chaney or Pierce was in it longer.
Yeah,
I think there are more because of that. There are more of his characters that are more famous, more recognized. The Frankenstein monster, the Wolfman, Dracula, to some extent, the Bride of Frankenstein, all of the others. Chaney died at the age of 42, August of 1930. Just when he was hitting his peak. So right after he had filmed his first talking movie, The Unholy Three. So he died the following month. Who knows what Chaney could have done? But Chaney, the difference is Chaney did these extremes on himself. The pulling back of the nose and the everything that he went through, to
Excruciating.
excruciating pain. And they both had the same philosophy, though, that the performer must suffer in his role, really, to provide a great performance. That's what I think. That's kind of why Pierce was kind of harsh on some of the people he was on, including Chaney Jr. But both men believed that. Now, mind you, you have the big difference. Chaney's doing it to himself, and Pierce is doing it to others. So it's easy to say that the actor must suffer.
Yeah. Right.
That's a good point. I mean, Chaney at his time was the best, but then in 1928, again, the monkey talks. Look at that incredible makeup he did. I would love to have known what Chaney would have done if he had been the Frankenstein monster, or if he had been a chimp. You know, let's compare the two. But I wouldn't say who was best. I would say they were each best during their time under the circumstances and the materials that they had. I'll be political.
I think it's probably safe to say that if there was a difference between them in terms of quality, it was relatively minuscule.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about great and you're talking about great. It's like maybe the difference between Hank Aaron and Willie Mays. I mean, you have to start nitpicking. They're both at that same level.
Yeah.
I have just one more question for you, Christopher, on Pierce. I'm curious about his legacy, his influence. I mean, this guy was so good at what he did. I've heard, current day contemporary makeup artists like Tom Savini talk about being influenced by him.
Yeah.
How profound do you think his influence has been on Savini and others too?
Well, let's take a step back and let's look at his influence outside of makeup in Hollywood. I know there isn't time to cover it, but when you go into the book, Pierce, again, was an athlete. He enjoyed sports. Back in the mid-30s, the Universal and the other studios, Fox, MGM, had these basketball scrimmages. And they would play each other, and they'd tour the country. Carl Lumley Jr. made Pierce the coach and manager of the Universal team, and they were world renowned. They were so good because of his influence that half of that team went to the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. This is the Olympics of Hitler, Jesse Owens. The first time men's basketball is in the Olympics, and they win the gold.
Yeah.
And they came back and said, we wouldn't have won it had it not been for Jack Pierce. So he's had other influences beyond just his legacy is beyond, which is all covered in the book. His legacy was beyond the horror and makeup. But, the story of Jack Pierce, it's just extraordinary. And I learned so much researching this book and writing it that I never knew, that I just really grew to love the man and just felt sorry for him. He's talent, perseverance, the challenges he was up against, the emotional individuality of this man through nearly 6 decades of Hollywood. You think about when he first started in 1910 up to the early 1960s, how much had changed in Hollywood, the industry at that time that he witnessed. And again, the flathead, the monster, the neck bolts, laceration, we still talk about it today. Show that to any kid, again, that has never even heard of Jack Pierce, never seen the film Frankenstein, they'll say, oh, that's Frankenstein. So it makes as much of an impact today, that monster, as it did 95 years ago. I think that's not many Hollywood professionals in front of or behind the camera can really make that claim. He still continued to be recognized, though, as an innovator of world entertainment and design. They made an honorary Lifetime Achievement Award they gave to him in 2003 from the Hollywood Makeup Artists and Hairstylists Guild. And as early as 2013, 10 years later, the Cinema Makeup School dedicated. They're in the greater Los Angeles area. They have a gallery dedicated to his honor. I'd love to go see it. So he's still talked about. He's still revered. And I think it was Pierce himself who really gave the best eulogy that really sums up the focus and resolve of his own career, his own legacy. And he says, and it's in the book, the sole reason for any makeup, and particularly a character makeup, is not to proclaim the skill of the artist or the actor, but to help tell the story.
Mm.
Therefore, makeup must not be obviously makeup-y. In other words, it needs to be realistic. It needs to be believable, even in the most implausible of films. This, in turn, demands that it be supervised by a qualified artist. For the actor, no matter how skilled he or she may be in the technical detail of applying their own makeup, rarely has the right perspective to judge the makeup without personal bias. So I think that sums up Jack Career's legacy, his life, personally, professionally. It wasn't all about ego and fame. It was about doing things right and making the biggest impact for the studio he worked for.
Very well said. Great makeup man, phenomenal, but played baseball, semi-pro.
Yeah.
Was an outstanding basketball coach, and you do go into that in depth in the book. There was a lot of talent there with Jack Pierce. A lot of talent shown off in this book. It's very much in depth. Jack Pierce, Hollywood's Makeup Master from 2022, still in print. You can find it at Amazon, and it really explores his career and his life in its entirety. That book is still in print, still out there. And Christopher Locke's newest book is also out as well, The Wolfman. That is available at Amazon. Chris, so what's the exact title for the Wolfman book?
So if you look at the Jack Pierce book, my author page, there's a little disclaimer I have to give you. Sometimes my books has my last name spelling L-O-C-K, and sometimes it's L-O-C-K-E. And the reason is my original family surname going back centuries was L-O-C-K. There was already a Christopher Locke with the E who was a published author. I didn't want to get confused. So I use L-O-C-K for all my Universal books. My grandpa added the E for the 1930 census. No one knows why. I don't know if he's trying to hide from someone or what. That's what he did.
Yeah.
So it's called The Wolfman, The Complete History of the 1941 Horror Classic, Christopher Locke, L-O-C-K. But again, if you get on my author page, as you stated, first on Amazon, you'll see all 40-some books on there. This is the last one I actually wrote. Nothing to do with the Universal Monsters, but it's about the history of America. We're coming up on its 250th anniversary. So this was an important one for me to get out too.
Right.
But I will definitely send you guys the Wolfman book. I'm going to get it to you pretty quick because it's 500 pages. It really goes in depth, much more than any of the other books I've had. So it's going to give you that long enough time to hopefully we'll have another podcast in December to celebrate its 85th anniversary. But you're going to need that time to read it.
Yeah. It sounds terrific. Really looking forward to seeing that. As always, we've enjoyed having Christopher Locke, regardless of how you want to spell it, with the E, without. Either way works fine with us. Christopher, this has been great. He has written books on The Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula, lots of horror, in addition to a lot of Michigan history related, some of it to the automobile industry. Christopher, we wish you best of luck with the new Wolfman book, and hope you sell a few more Jack Pierce books too. It's terrific. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Thank you both again very much.
Our thanks to Christopher Locke for being our guest. Also, my thanks to co-host and producer Tracy Asteria. Could not do it without you either. We thank all of you for listening and viewing, joining us in this little museum of the macabre And we hope to see you again next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.